Well, I'm so pleased to have you back for another one of our studies in Psalms. I'm kind of going back. I did Psalm 139 last week, and I'm skipping back to Psalm 19 today. So, hmm, happens sometimes. Um, and just to let you know, those of you who tune into this regularly, next week I'll have Palm Sunday meditation rather than a regular Bible study. Then I'll have an Easter one for Easter Sunday, not a Bible study, but an Easter sort of devotion. And then after that, we'll start a study on the tabernacle. So uh, if you like the idea of the tabernacle study, that'll be the Sunday after Easter. Well, let's read together Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. It is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The decrees of the Lord are firm, and all of them are righteous. They are more precious than gold, than much pure gold. They are sweeter than honey from the honeycomb. By them your servant is warned. In keeping them there is great reward. But who can discern their own errors? Forgive my hidden faults. Keep your servant also from willful sins. May they not rule over me. Then I will be blameless, innocent of great transgression. May these words of my mouth and this meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Well, this is one of David's psalms, and in many ways, there's some who think it's the best one he wrote. It's almost an apologetic, and by apologetic we mean not to say an apology like I'm sorry for something, but apologetic says I give a reason for my faith, and he calls into witness about God's existence, all of creation itself. It's really very wonderful. And then also the law and the inner witness of the Lord. So really there's sort of three sections to this psalm. We'll look at them in that way. The first six verses, which are just unmatched poetry, talk about the nature. And you see, I have behind me a nebula from outer space, which I think is absolutely stunning. And anyway, um, and if the Bible tells us that the void, in Genesis 1 and 2, the earth was without form and void, that the void, the emptiness of space, had to be obedient to him. It had no choice but to obey God when God said, "Let there be light." And so God is glorified in creation. Diodore of Tarsus said, "Where there is order, there is also proof of the one who determined the order." And so this is an argument against atheism. It's saying that if this universe has great order, it had to have somebody who put it in order and keeps it in order. Um, and because of that, all of creation is engaged in praising God, and we really can see that. I like this beautiful scene behind me, but also, you would think about the birds singing, we think about the wonder of nature, we think about the wonder of our own bodies. We've talked about that before. That all of these things say someone made this and made it in the most wonderful way, and it all gives praise to Him. It's like it speaks of it all the time. Now, back in the days of David, and even to more modern times, people would look at nature and they would say that nature itself was the God, that the sun was the God, that the stars were the gods, that there was a rain god, and so on and so forth. But David says, no, this nature is not to be worshiped. It is worshiping God. It is turning its praise to God. And that's what's substantially different in what we believed. It's also, in a way, if you think about it, when God created the universe, he made it where it must obey him. His sovereignty is overall. So that when he says that the galaxies must spin this way and that the stars must burn that way, when he says that the oceans must behave this way with the tide coming in and the tide going out, none of these things have a choice. They must do what God says. And somewhat in myself, I can see, I hope that I have blue eyes. I had no choice about that. That was determined by the genetics and the laws that God's created. And I used to have blonde hair, now it's white, but that was not something I chose. God chose that. I grew to a certain height. That was programmed. And so in those senses, the sovereignty of God ruled, and they bring praise to him because he sets it in place. But in our souls and our hearts, God has done something different. He's given us free will. And so he's, when it says that we were created in the image of God, it's not necessarily that God had a nose and two eyes and a mouth. It means that there was something about us that God made that was different than all of creation, which simply had to obey what he says. And that is, he gave us free will. Free will, this terrible and wonderful thing that we have. So here we look at this and we see that we have no control of the voice we have, but in what we say. We have no control in our eye color, but in what we see. We have no control in our hearing ability, but in what we hear. We have no control in our shoe size, but in where we go. So that human beings are the glorious exception that God has made to all of creation, because he has limited his sovereignty in order to give us free will. So in the one sense, the heavens declare the glory of God because they must obey, but they also glorify God by showing how different they are from us. And that makes us go to the next section, which is 7 through 11. And here David talks about the law of God. Now he's talking about the revealed law of God that came through Moses, where God says, explain to people, first 5 books explains why we are here, what we are here for, our purpose, God's purpose for humankind, and what he wants us to do. It is the revealed thought of God. Our Bibles are the revealed thought of God. So, when you say, what does God think of me, or what does God want for me? Well, it's in the Bible. He has revealed himself there. And through the law, he shows us that our obedience glorifies him, even as the heavens glorify God. The heavens, again, glorify God. They can't help it. But when we choose to obey the Lord, when we choose to obey God, we bring glory to him. And so that's a wonderful thing. And David also said that these laws of God are to be desired, because there's a joy that we have in harmonizing our life with his will. There's a joy that we have. And that's something that people who are not believers cannot quite grasp, that they see these laws as being oppressive. What we see is we're getting ourselves in line the way we're supposed to work. You think about that, when your car is working properly, it's taking you in places in the best way, and it'll let you know. When it's not working properly, it'll pop and clug and make all sorts of things. And it's because something is wrong inside. And when we're right inside by obeying God's law, we find a joy that is unique to us in that. And the last 3 verses, 12 through 14, talk about the revelation of God's grace. He talks about, now he says, the glories of the heaven and the law, these are all outside. Now he talks about inside. He talks about our hidden thoughts, because we know about what that means. There's times when we have thoughts that are intrusive, things that we would rather not think about. We are tempted to pride, for example. Well, we want to hear our name mentioned. We want to hear our accomplishment recognized. It can also be in things like having a spirit of unforgiveness, where we just can't get past that offense that someone did to us. We just can't let it go. It can be in things like the lies that we tell others. It can be in so-called small sins, the things that we do where we should say something positive. We don't. We know it. We perhaps when we get on the road and we drive, we are a little impatient. Okay, I confess. I confess. Um, but there are these things, these inside things, and nobody knows our struggles like we do. Nobody knows what we face like we do. And the Lord says, I know about those, and I work in those hidden areas of your life. Augustine, we sometimes call him Saint Augustine, even though we're not Catholic, but he said this: God's testing is not aimed at his getting to know something he was ignorant of before, but of bringing to light what was hidden in a person. Well, think about that. These things inside of us, this testing that we have, is so we can see our need from the Lord and what He can do. And he closes us. We used to call it the YPL benediction. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in Thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. The NIV changes it, I think, a little bit better, and it says, "My help." And that help is the Lord will help us to fight against the evil things outside of us and evil things that try to come inside of us, and help us to live victoriously over sin. He talks about my Redeemer. That word comes through the King James and also NIV, Redeemer, because salvation is through grace, and the Lord comes and He saves us into this new life. Now, all of nature will one day waste away, but God made us to be eternal, to live forever. And by being our Redeemer, He's renewing us, and He's reminding us that our destiny is greater than the stars or the galaxies. It is forever and ever and ever in His presence, and to serve Him when days cease to be. Well, that's an amazing thing. This is a great psalm. Read it over again and let God bless you with it. Have a great week. God bless you.